Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith. And today, listeners, I've got a really exciting couple of guests. Their names are Eric and Alexandra Right. They're authors. And you know me by now, I sometimes like to have disruptive guests, controversial guests, divisive guests. And I think you'll find that these are definitely under that umbrella. So welcome, Eric.
Hi, thank you. Nice to meet you. I guess I'm controversial in a way. I'll take that. I've been called worse, put it that way.
What I think is going to be the main topic within this particular conversation is that we're going to be discussing, something that may or may not positively impact your relationship. And I know that you and Alexandra have had this particular thing positively impact your relationship, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. So can you give us a little bit of background, Eric, before we get stuck into the heart of the matter?
Sure, absolutely. And by the way, Alexandra is coming back from a kickboxing class, so she should be here shortly. She probably thinks of me when she does that class. But just for reference, I am not an author. We did write this book called Higher Connections that came out in July. I am a public accountant here in the United States. But about 2 years ago, during the heart of COVID, we had 3 kids, we had jobs, things were going a little crazy. I started using cannabis here in the United States. Previously, I had been into liquor and alcohol and beer and wine and all that other fun stuff. But, I wanted to try something different. Our lives were very stressful during the pandemic, with kids home at school, from school, us home from work. And I started having some interesting thoughts and experiences that were happening to me when I was high on cannabis. Eventually, my wife, Alexandra, suggested writing them down and documenting them. And at some point, it turned into the book that was released. The heart of the message of the book is that my experiences with cannabis has helped my relationship with Alexandra and my family, as she describes in the book through her little blurbs. And when she gets here, she can certainly expand on them. We were in a rough spot. We were not getting along well. We were fighting, arguing, and a lot of that was just general life stresses, work, kids, etc. Some of that was because of my historical actions, which in some part were caused by alcohol, in some part caused by some other things. But once I turned to cannabis, I was seemingly able to understand what she was feeling much better than I previously ever could when I was high. I equated in the book to similar to an empath, someone that can kind of sense how others are feeling by looking at them. However, in these cases, I was not looking at her or anyone else I was around. These were just senses and feelings that I was having that at some point I realized were not my own. And in the book, we go through, probably 10 or 12 examples in I think chapter 4 or 5, where I lay out kind of what happened, what my feelings were, and why we both thought that they were different from how I normally would have felt when I was sober. And, the result of that was just me being able to understand her much better than I ever did, whether I wanted to or not. I can understand what she was feeling, what she was thinking in certain moments, and essentially get into her brain, which is a wild and crazy place. And that's kind of the central message of the book. We go into what we think might be happening when I have these downloads or connections, as I call them, to other people. what I might be connecting to, why that might be happening. And then I go into some other crazy concepts like simulation theory and souls and third eyes and all that fun stuff. But essentially at the heart of the book, it's really just a message of, cannabis helped me and helped us. We are certainly not saying it's for everybody and it would have the same result for everybody. But for us, it worked. And, I think what we wanted to do was tell our story and share our experiences and the benefits of what we've gone through for others and see if it could potentially help them.
Wow, yeah. Well, I know that my audience knows that I'm quite open-minded and unbiased and do my best to be not judgmental when it comes to, things that I wouldn't necessarily be interested in engaging in. And this is probably something that wouldn't interest me personally, but I'm always open to sort of explore it in terms of having conversations with other people and at least, offering it out there to people who might want to explore it further, who are members of my audience. So, I know that obviously for some parts of the world, cannabis isn't legal for a start. So there would be a barrier there. So what would you say to somebody that would be wanting to explore this but hasn't got the sort of legal access to it?
Yeah, it's a tough question. And, in the book, we go into why cannabis was made illegal here in the U.S. Back in the early 20th century, it was essentially xenophobia because of Mexicans coming to the country, bringing marijuana at the time with them. And people that were here, because of their hatred for Mexicans, determined that cannabis was or should be made illegal. It was an evil drug. And so it ended up being made illegal in, I think, the 1930s and again in the 1960s. And it's still a Schedule I drug in a similar realm of cocaine or heroin or LSD. There really was never any reason for it medically to be considered a dangerous or evil or gateway drug. There's really no proof of that. I know plenty of people that have done marijuana and cannabis for years and years and years with no negative side effects, but it is a challenge. And, in other parts of the world, I don't have an answer for how people would be able to experience this other than, if you do happen to be somewhere where marijuana is legal or you're able to access it and try it out. And what I always suggest is, to document what your thoughts and feelings are when you are high and see how they're different from how you normally think. And one thing that Alexandra and I did at some point was we watched her favorite movie, Pretty Woman. And, we kind of sat there, and I hate that movie, just for the record. I'm not a fan of Pretty Woman, but I know a lot of people are. And we just kind of sat there and, she loves that movie. And when she had something she laughed at or was crying at, I was having a very similar reaction to her. And that was kind of the way we said, wow, this is something weird that normally I would not ever express any emotion when watching a movie, especially one like Pretty Woman. But that's how we kind of said, look, if you want to try this, watch a favorite movie of someone that you're with and see if your emotions and your feelings and thoughts are different than you normally would be when you're sober. But again, not everyone has that access. And it's something, when you look at what just happened with Brittany Grier, the women's basketball player in Russia who got arrested for marijuana possession, and she was sentenced to whatever, but she just got released. I mean, there are these policies around the world that just don't make sense. And hopefully at some point it'll change. And I think as more people like myself and others come out and say, yeah, look, I'm a professional, I have a full-time career, but I consume cannabis and I consume marijuana and I'm fine. I'm not moving on to harder drugs and I can still function as a normal adult, that more people will accept it and hopefully it gets legalized both in the US and around the world.
Yeah, well, who knows? Who knows? But when you
Right.
think about what is out there that's potentially damaging to our health, such as alcohol, for example, cigarettes that are readily available, it makes you wonder, why there is that hurdle when it comes to this particular, I don't know whether you'd call it a drug or a plant.
Yeah. I mean, in the book, I think in chapter 3, I list those exact things, cigarettes, alcohol, fatty foods, sugars. I mean, you think about probably the thing that's going to cause all of us cancer at some point is plastic and platelets. I think that's the way it's called, platelets. But, essentially little bits of plastic that are in our blood at this point. And when you look at all those things and the statistics around the number of deaths and the number of cases of heart disease or cancer or diabetes caused by all these things that are perfectly fine and acceptable in society, when you look at cannabis, there really is no proof that it's any more dangerous than any of those. There are plenty of benefits that are being researched right now around pain relief and when people have cancer, about giving cannabis to them to control their nausea. So there are benefits to the plant that I think need to be explored, but because of the federal illegality of it, there's not a ton of research that can be done. There are private organizations and universities that can do some research around it, and some of that is being done. But the reality is, I think there's a lot more about the plant that needs to be explored in terms of the impact to our bodies and our brains and how it might change how we perceive consciousness. And so, I get into some of that in the book, and it's hard changing conceptions and minds and perceptions about marijuana or cannabis because people have been hearing about it for so long that for them to change their mind about it, it's difficult. But again, I think as more people come out and say, I do it, I really am hoping that it won't be viewed any different than caffeine, for example, that 20 years ago, everyone was hearing it's bad for you. Right? And,
yeah, that's true. That's another thing, isn't it? Caffeine is another one that it's considered harmful. Obviously based on, I suppose, what you consider to be somebody's personal use regarding any of these products, really.
Yeah, Alexandra drinks 18 cups of coffee a day, And years ago it was, oh, well, it's bad for you, but maybe it's good for you, but maybe it's bad for you. But, people accepted it and they consumed it, and it was never really a question about whether it should be made illegal or not. So I think at some point cannabis will be viewed in the same way. Today, it's getting there. I think as in the United States, more states are making it legal for both rec and medical use, and I think that trend will continue.
In terms of your own general health, though, sort of playing devil's advocate, Eric, why do you feel you need something that is considered, I suppose, harmful to your health?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that I need it. I think it's a way for me to relax and unwind after a long week. Again, I used to use alcohol, and I think you see more and more studies coming out that says, well, any amount of alcohol is not good. Alcohol is a poison. It initially makes you feel good, and then it makes you feel really bad. With cannabis, if I do it 1 or 2 times a week, it makes me feel relaxed. And, I talk in the book about it really helps me control kind of the background noise or the elevator music in my brain, which is essentially just, things that are always there that I'm worried about or concerned about. Usually it's work. For others, it might be, money or family or friends or whatever. But it turns that off and allows me just to focus on myself and focus on those around me. And that's where a lot of these connections and experiences that I've documented happen. And I enjoy it. And if there is some risk to it, I will accept that risk, although I don't think there's a very large risk with it at this point. But again, everything in moderation, whether it's fatty foods or fried foods or sugar or alcohol or cigarettes, everything needs to be consumed in moderation. And, I go to the doctor, I work out, I'm healthy as far as I'm aware. So if consuming cannabis a couple of times a week is what my vice is, then I am okay with that.
Okay, so thank you for sharing, your own personal story, and that's a very brave thing to do, especially as it is considered, as I say, in some parts of the world, including where I am, an illegal substance. But what I'm also interested in knowing, because I want to, as I say, come at this in an unbiased, non-judgmental way, is what was, I mean, you did touch on it a little bit, but what was damaging your relationship previously that's now sort of improved?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Yeah, I think Alexandra and I have been together for a long time, about 20 years at this point. As any relationship, there were ups and downs. There were things that happened that were more of a result of me being young and stupid and drinking alcohol, that I made mistakes. And so when you look at kind of where we were 10 years ago versus now, or even 2 or 3 years ago versus now, I think the resentment on her end for some of my actions in the past has eased a little bit. And I'm not saying that's directly because of my use of cannabis, but any relationship, there are going to be issues that come up that cause resentment. And there was a lot of that on both of our ends. And the actions on my part were something that I regret. And, we've talked about it and we've tried to move past that. But, when we got to the pandemic, there was just stresses all over the place. As many couples and husbands and wives with young kids and families can attest to, it was a very stressful time. Being stuck in the house, not knowing what was going to happen with work and school and everything else going on. It got worse. And she talks about in the book, she was ready to contact a lawyer. I think she did contact a lawyer to start a separation process. And we were very close to separating, 3 young kids, and we were trying to make it work for them and stay together for them. But it got to the point where it wasn't working. And, I changed up my behavior, and like I said, I gave up alcohol completely and switched to cannabis. But again, that may not be for everyone, and it's not necessarily a solution that's going to work for everyone. I think everyone has to find what works for them to help control their stress levels and their anxieties and fears. But it worked for me. That's all I can say. And again, I hope that if the book does anything, it makes people more aware that it might be something that people want to try. And if it doesn't help, then that's okay. I'm not suggesting, again, it would help everyone. But it did work for us. And, we'll see. There's no guarantee we're going to stay together forever. Nothing is guaranteed in life. But we're trying. And, we're proud of this book and proud of the message that it talks to.
Excellent. So, as I say, thank you very much for sharing that and being open and vulnerable and courageous in sharing what you've shared. So you've actually been completely sober from an alcohol point of view since you started this then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I gave up alcohol about 1.5 years ago. I figured 20 years was enough drinking for me. But yeah, I haven't had a drink in about 1.5 years. I don't miss the hangovers, for the record.
And was that sort of binge drinking, or was that sort of daily, a need?
Yeah, I mean, for my career, it involves a lot of going out and, networking events and happy hours. And that was a lot. So it was more, going out to events, coming home drunk because I probably hadn't eaten much, and it always turned into fighting and accusations and resentment. And she hated when I came home drunk. She hated it. And now I know that. And again, when I'm high, she likes me because I am more communicative and vulnerable, and I want to talk to her and be her friend. And that's something that she talks to, that we're friends again. And that did not happen for a long, long time while I was drinking. And again, I'm not saying that the drinking caused that. There were other things that were going on in both our lives, but the drinking didn't help. For sure.
No, definitely. I can obviously appreciate that. So what was her initial reaction though to you sort of, did you sort of instantly pack up alcohol as soon as you started the cannabis, or was there a sort of gap period between one to the other, or how did that transition happen?
Yeah, I mean, again, being home from COVID, there wasn't any networking events or happy hours to go to. And again, because I never really drank at home, I had cannabis at home, so I just started using that. And initially when I started talking to her about my thoughts and experiences, she didn't really know what to make of them. It was kind of all right. He's bringing up these funny, interesting concepts, but she didn't really know what to make of them. And it wasn't until one night, probably 4 or 5 months into the pandemic, where I had taken by accident more edibles than I thought, and I ended up having a very interesting kind of out-of-body experience where I was very emotional. I said sorry to her for everything that I had put her through, and I told her I loved her. And it felt like to both of us that there was a significant amount of negative energy that left my body that day. And I distinctly remember kind of floating above my body outside. We were sitting outside kind of talking. And, at that point, she said, look, whatever you're going through, start writing it down, start documenting what you're thinking, what you're experiencing, and kind of see where it goes. And this is kind of where it's gone. So, she initially was skeptical of what I was going through and what I was talking about. But I think at some point she realized, all right, something's happening that's different from anything that he's ever experienced. And, she started working with me and trying to understand, when we had a connection or where I was able to feel what she was feeling, could that be a coincidence? Could it just be, we said the same thing at the same time, or I felt the same thing that she did at the same time? But eventually it was like, all right, this is happening way too many times for it to be a coincidence every single time. And so eventually she's like, all right, something's happening. Let me help you try to figure out what it was. And that's kind of what we talk about in the book.
So initially, did your wife Alexandra have some resistance to you changing from alcohol to cannabis, and was, like you say, skeptical about whether that would be a positive transition or not?
Yeah, I think she was more like, what is going on here? Why did he stop drinking, and why is he, doing cannabis? Again, I think it was more just trying to understand what I was going through. Was this something that she should have been worried about because I was doing cannabis versus alcohol? She did a little bit of cannabis, but not too much. She has started doing more of it over the past year or so. But again, I think it was initially like, what is happening? And can we figure out how this is going to end up? I think on the night of the out-of-body experience, she was worried she was going to take me to the hospital because she had never seen me like that. But I did not have to go to the hospital. But eventually it was, I think the skepticism went away pretty quickly because it was more, all right, let's try to figure out, what you're experiencing and what you're thinking, and, make it something positive. And for our relationship, again, because I was talking to her more and expressing my feelings more, I think it quickly turned into a positive thing for her. And again, I keep repeating this, but it doesn't mean this is going to happen for everybody. It happened for us, and it was a good thing for us. But it doesn't mean that if someone else consumes cannabis, they're going to be all of a sudden, improving their relationships. I think we still have to work hard at doing that and making sure it's consistent. And when you're not on cannabis, you can still talk to each other, which we did for the rest.
So do you think for you then, what sort of switch was being able to be more communicative, I should say, without sort of being aggressive, more calm?
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of that, again, goes back to kind of the elevator music, which again is just something that, when you're in the shower, under a nice warm showers, there's something that you just kind of put out of your mind. And the shower, I think in the book, again, I equate being high to being in a nice, beautiful, warm shower where you're just not thinking about a thing. Just you're looking inwards towards yourself, focusing on, whatever is good in your life. That's what cannabis does for me. It helps turn off any stresses, any worries that I have, even for a couple of hours. It's better than nothing. And that's kind of what it does for me. And it's been a big help. For others, it may not do that. It may make them sleepy. She takes cannabis, she is out. And what we equated that to is her mind is always racing. During the day, when she's sober, her mind is very, very active. Mind's always spinning. And when she takes cannabis, it kind of turns it off. And she's able, again, just to kind of relax, watch TV, not worry about the kids, not worry about the house, just kind of be herself. And she loves it.
That's another thing, I suppose, is, how do you manage this around your kids? Are they aware of it?
Not at the moment. And by the way, she's here, so I think she's going to join us here in a second. Yeah, I mean, they're not really aware of it. I think they're more aware of us getting along better and just kind of being friends again. And I think for them, there are still moments where we fight and we don't get along, but I think for the most part, they see us getting along better, which is a big help. So, for them, I think the subject, they're still young, and concept of marijuana, I think, is not something we're quite ready to introduce them to. At some point we will, and we know they're going to go off to high school, go off to college, and be exposed to it. So we want them to be aware of our experiences and what we've been through. So we'll see. Not quite there yet. So Alexandra's here. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear her?
Yep.
Hi, Alexandra.
Nice to meet you. Sorry, I joined the party late.
No worries.
Hi.
No, I'm happy to have you manage to get on the actual episode, because I'm interested in hearing your point of view as regards, what change did you see in your relationship once Eric basically became sober from the alcohol and found, this different concept of trying cannabis and that changing things for you both?
Yeah, I talk about this all the. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, a little. Yeah. Okay. Good. I love to talk about this because it was a drastic, much better change. Why are you making fun of me? I just got here. You're already laughing at me. 2 seconds in. Sorry. Yeah, it was a drastic change, I'd say, and sometimes it feels like it was overnight. I felt it was easier to talk to him, which helps the flow of communication, which obviously is extremely important in any relationship, but especially so when you're trying to manage 3 kids, a household, demanding careers and whatnot. And that, I think that was the beginning of it, right? So from better communication turned better, I guess, family moments, turned into a more connected friendship, which just kind of helped everything else. So I absolutely love it.
Did you have any, in all honesty, hand on heart moment? Did you have any skepticism initially?
Yes, the first time I think I really noticed it. Is it okay to talk about the outer body experience?
Yes.
Out of body.
Yeah.
I spoke to it, but I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah. So at first, when he first started this, I didn't take it necessarily very seriously. I was happy that he was lighter, not as tense, and just able to spend time with us and really be present, right? Because there are times where before that, where both of us, you could tell that we were somewhere else. Even though we were there, we were thinking about somewhere else, and he didn't. In this particular moment, he wasn't like that. He was just laughing, and the kids were laughing. We were having a really good time. And then I noticed he was high, and like I said, at first I started laughing, and then I started to think, oh shit, oh my God, something's wrong with him. I'm gonna have to take him to the hospital. Who's gonna take care of the kids? And then he started to have the out of body experience. And like I said, at first I was laughing the whole time because this is not something I was ever really used to or had seen from him. And I was just cracking up. I was like, oh God, what am I going to do with him? He's all high. But that was the first time that I really realized what was going on with him and how it started to change him on a physical level, emotional level, spiritual level, if you want to go down that path, because he started to, I guess, I don't know if you have reliving different moments and during that episode, and you were saying how much you love me and how you want this to work, and those are not things I had really heard from him in that kind of a way before.
So
I think that was pretty much what I
yeah, Eric mentioned earlier that you'd almost got to the point where you were going to go through the separation process prior
Yeah.
to this happening.
Yeah, we were. It was at the point where I can honestly say we were both, honestly, borderline miserable. It just was not working. I felt extremely overwhelmed. I felt like the demands of the household were all on me, the demands of the children on top of my career, and I didn't feel like I had a supportive partner. And we did try to communicate. We did try different things, but it wasn't working. We couldn't get through to each other.
So even though you was going through that process, there must have been still that underlying love for him.
Oh, always. I 100% agree with that. I'll always, no matter whatever. I mean, we don't know what happens 5, 10, 20 years from now, but I know I will always love him very, very much. He's the father of my 3 kids. We've been together almost 20 years. I've known him. I feel like I've grown up with him. I've been with him. I was 20 years old. So
she looks the same, by the way.
Not right now. I discussed with him. Not right now. But generally speaking, yeah. And I think that's really what I guess I held on to for a long time, and the hope that if we could get back to a good place and really become a better family unit for ourselves and for the children.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your honesty and being very open about, how that's impacted your relationship, both negatively previously and positively as you are now. For the benefit of the audience, if they wanted to connect with you, what would be your best contact information?
Our email address, higherconnectionsnow at gmail.com. I always mess it up, so it's higherconnectionsnow.
As I say, thank you so much for both being so open and sharing your story. It's been really insightful. And before we close,
you're very welcome.
Before we close the episode, do you have any sort of final words of wisdom to share?
Yeah, look, again, I'm not an author. I think we did our best to kind of summarize our experiences and the benefits of those. As I've said multiple times, it may not be for anyone, and we understand that. But, we wanted to try to give people hope that, if they want to try cannabis and they're open to it, there may be some good benefits for them, and to not necessarily be scared of it, and see where it kind of takes you. And, I hope that people try it, and if they do, we'd love to hear from them, and we'd love to kind of hear what their experiences are with their relationships, whether it's a wife or a husband, a mom, a dad, a son, whatever. I think there's a lot more about cannabis that needs to be explored and researched. And again, hopefully someday it's fully legal and everyone can experience it. But until that day, we can just share our experiences and hope for the best.
Absolutely. So thank you again. It's been wonderful to have a conversation with both you, Eric, and you, Alexandra. Thank you so much for being wonderful, open, and vulnerable guests today.
Thank you for your time.
True love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group 2 Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.